it's Thomas here, and I'm joined by Lou from Tropic Marin. And I had a question I wanted to ask you, because I'm sure you've heard a version of this many, many times. But this is something I think we should cover. So stop me if you've heard this before, okay? My tank looks great. It's been running for years. All I ever do is water changes. I don't do anything else. I feed my fish, I do water changes, I don't dose, I don't test anymore, I don't worry about anything, just water changes, that's it. Why should I do any of that stuff?
It's a great question. I get that question all the time.
Right?
You want me to answer it?
Yeah, I think it's a one-way ticket to old tank syndrome, but I'd love to get your take on it, because you get a lot more into the nitty-gritty with testing and dosing and how important that is. And I'm sure you, more than anybody else, would know the dangers of just ignoring that stuff.
Well, the real answer to the question is, by the time you see the problem, it's too late.
Yeah.
You just don't want to wait until you're knee-deep into the death of your corals and your tank growing a whole bunch of stuff that you don't want to grow, and then try to get out of that, because you may not be able to get out of it, or it's going to take you way more time to get out of it than it needed to.
Right.
An ounce of prevention.
Pound of cure.
A pound of cure. It really, really holds true. And the other kind of aspect of this is that, and this is going to hurt some people, so
get ready.
Sorry, folks, but
get your feels all ready.
If you want to keep a successful reef, I think you need to be the kind of person that enjoys some of this stuff a little bit, some of this maintenance stuff. If you really, really hate the maintenance part of this, do a tank that doesn't require that, right? I had, for instance, a cichlid, African cichlid tank for years.
Yeah.
On 150. Was awesome. The fish have tons of personality. They're beautiful. Super low maintenance.
Very easy.
Super low maintenance. They'll eat anything. They live in all kinds of different conditions. Super easy to keep. Really fascinating to watch. Get to see them breed and all kinds of cool stuff. Always babies in the tank. That's the kind of tank you should have, or something similar, if you don't enjoy some of the routine maintenance that's required in a reef tank.
Yes.
All right? You need to do periodic testing. You have to. If you don't know what some of your major parameters are, so let's talk about what would be those major parameters. Well, calcium, alkalinity, magnesium.
The big three.
You got to know what those are.
Yep,
right?
Absolutely.
Granted, alkalinity is super easy to test for.
Absolutely.
Calcium and magnesium, exactly the opposite. Two of the hardest tests to do, take the most time, but you sit down with a cup of coffee on a Sunday morning, get your test kits out, get your water sample, and just take your time and do the test. I'm not one of these people that says you have to test every week or even every couple weeks. I think that once you've established a stable tank, which takes some time.
Yeah, absolutely.
But once you've established a stable tank, once a month, once every couple of months, I think is fine. But if you don't enjoy that testing even a little bit, maybe a reef isn't exactly the right thing for you.
For sure.
Right? Water changes. You said part of your question was, I do periodic water changes and my tank looks great. Why do I need to do all this other stuff? I'm assuming the other stuff means additives.
Additives testing, yeah.
Well, there's a simple mathematical answer to that one.
I like math.
Which is, you're doing your water change with natural seawater levels of calcium, alkalinity, magnesium. If you're able to maintain adequate levels with, say, a 20% water change every week, which is a lot of work, right? Oh, yeah. More work than I'd want to do, but let's say you're really into
arguably more work than doing the tests.
Well, yeah, not arguably, definitely. So let's say somebody's really into doing the water changes, they're doing 20% every week. That means that you're replenishing 20% of the consumption of those things every week.
So eventually you're going to start lagging behind whether you like it or not.
If your tank is healthy and growing, then those numbers are going to go down.
Yeah.
If they're not going down, it's an indication that your tank is not healthy. So either way, you're screwed.
Either way, it's a bad answer.
Either way, it's not the way to go, because if you're able to maintain the parameters that you need with just a 20% water change every once in a while, then the tank's not doing what it can do.
Yeah.
And if you're not watching what those numbers are, and you're thinking that you're maintaining those numbers with a 20% water change periodically, you're wrong if your tank is healthy.
And that's the thing people aren't considering, and I catch people on this all the time actually, and this is why it's important to test at least monthly. The consumption of whatever you're putting in your tank, whether it's only through water changes or you're even using additives, the consumption of alkalinity, calcium, magnesium, even the foods and amino acids that you're going to be using will go up over time, because biomass will continue to go up in the tank. If your corals are growing, you're having a larger biomass, and there's going to be more consumption of the things to continue. It's exponential. Like a 1-inch coral that becomes a 2-inch coral is going to become a 4-inch coral, and then an 8-inch coral, and it happens more so exponentially than linearly. So your consumption of calcium and alkalinity, if you're not paying attention, you don't change your doser even, you've automated on a doser, that's going to level off, and then it's just going to start going down, even with you adding additives. So testing is very important.
Yeah, I want to give a little caveat to that though, which is testing is important, but you also are looking for trends. Don't go chasing numbers.
Oh, no, absolutely.
I get so many calls from people that say, you know, my calcium is 425 and I want it to be 432. How do I do that?
It's very specific numbers.
And you trust me, you can't even test your calcium that close.
No.
So it's a matter of looking for trends. The trends are going up, the trends are going down. And that's part of why periodic testing is good, is because you can graph that and you can see those trends. But it's important to learn to enjoy that part of the hobby. You know, when your numbers are going down because you're adding the same amount of that thing, that means your reef is growing. Yeah. So that's something to take some pride in and enjoy. So it's kind of a circular discussion where if you're able to maintain those values with just water changes, unless you've got a nano that you're doing 100% water change or a 90% water change every few days, if you're doing the standard 20% every week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or every month, if you're able to maintain those values with that amount of water change,
something's wrong.
Something is not as happy as it can be.
Yeah.
And if you can't maintain those, then you need to do additives, and then you need to test to know how much additives to add.
Yeah, I think the only type of tank where I could even see that really being viable for a long enough period of time for somebody to even come to the conclusion that that's all they need to do is with like a softy tank, something where calcium carbonate's not being taken up very readily. Spicules or sclerites inside of soft corals is vastly less calcium demanding and alkalinity demanding than an LPS skeleton or an SPS skeleton. So sure, you might have a softy tank that's bustling with zoanthids and finger leathers and stuff for maybe even a year, year and a half, and all you do is water changes. You will hit a tipping point at some point. The scary thought for me is if you're gonna hit that tipping point, and I think you were onto this a little bit earlier, when it's too late, think about the fact that now you have an entire system of mature corals that it's too late for, all at the same time. So now you're dealing with a problem that is going to go downhill so much faster because the biomass that is going downhill is a lot larger. So making sure that you never get to that point is the key. And if this sounds like you, like all I do is water changes and everything's fine, I'm not saying change everything you do immediately, right. But I am saying grab a test kit once a month. Just convince yourself once a month to test. Just see where you're at. And if you want to do things the lazy way, because that's me, I always do everything the lazy way. I am super lazy. I'm the laziest reefer there is. Just automate things that you can automate. You know, I would rather personally not test, once a week. I would rather have a Trident. I'd rather have a device testing for me. I am not, I'd like to be blissfully unaware, but I am aware of the fact that I have to maintain this piece of equipment now.
Yeah.
But I'd rather maintain the equipment every month, month and a half, 2 months, whatever it is. I think I have 2-month reagent packs so every 2 months I go and I swap the reagents, make sure everything looks clean and I'm good. I'd rather do that, and I know I can hold myself accountable to that. So that's what I do. But I'm still getting the data that I need. I won't run a tank blind. I can't, as lazy as I am, because I've been here and it sucks.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing where it needs to be part of what you enjoy.
Yeah.
Like seeing those testing results. Maybe the test itself isn't that much fun, but seeing that you're on target, seeing that you're doing the right thing, or seeing that you need something that you're not doing. The biggest point that I can make about all of this is corals are way tougher than we think they are.
Yeah.
And they will exist in an environment that is not optimum for them for quite some time before they start showing you that there's a problem. And by the time they're showing you there's a problem, now you're playing Monday morning quarterback trying to fix that. And fixing it is way harder to get those corals to recover from an injury rather than preventing them from getting there in the first place.
Yeah.
The number one point I want people to take away from this is, by the time those corals show you there's a problem, 90% of the time, it's already way late in the game, and you may not be able to save them.
Think of it this way. If this is the range of conditions that a coral can tolerate, it's a very wide range, let's say. And then you've got an inch either side where this is going to start causing death and this is going to start causing death. Most of what we're trying to do is keep the needle floating in the middle. We're not trying to peg it anywhere on this scale. We just float in here somewhere and the corals are going to do okay. The problem is, let's say we were over here and then we start doing some things and it starts dragging the needle the opposite direction. Oh, we don't notice. We're dosing way too much alkalinity and we're not paying attention because we're not dosing. It takes all the way till it gets to this point, which could be a month later, before the corals are like, yeah, we're going to die now. We've had enough of this. We're outside of our comfort zone. You had all this time to catch it,
yeah.
But you didn't. You could have caught it right here and then slowly brought it back down a set, or just ignore everything, do your water chases, and let things just drop off, slowly deplete and deplete and deplete. And the corals are like, we're fine. Okay, we're not fine. But it's a huge range. A lot of the time we pretend it's like this. This is what corals can tolerate right there. And if you don't keep it exactly right there, everything's going to go sideways. And that's not the case.
And another point about that is that if you find with testing that you're way off of something, don't just automatically correct it overnight.
Don't swing it all the way in one shot.
You've heard this statement before, and if there was ever a true statement, it's this: nothing good happens in a reef tank quickly.
Nothing.
Nothing good happens in a reef tank quickly. So if you find that there is an issue, take your time correcting that issue. These animals live their lives by osmosis and diffusion. If you correct what is out, or you change what is outside of them too quickly, it changes what's inside of them too quickly, and then that can end up in a health problem for them.
It's like shock, basically.
Yeah. So when you see there's a problem, fix it, but fix it slowly.
Yeah, incrementally. Take your time. Think of it this way, like if your corals, it's different. If you have like a wild temperature swing and it's way outside the range and your corals are crashing, you need to get it within an acceptable range fast. You don't necessarily want to get it all the way back to where it was before as fast as possible. Just shock in the other direction.
Yeah.
But you want to make the correction appropriately fast while taking it slow. You don't, like, obviously I'm not going to wait 6 weeks to bring my alkalinity from, if it ever got down to 5, I'm not going to take 6 weeks to get it to 6. I'm going to get it to 6 in probably a week and a half. Mm-hmm. Then I'm going to get it to 7 in another week and a half. Then once I get up to 8 or 7.5 or whatever my goal is, it'll have been a month.
Right.
But it'll be up there and nobody's going to lose themselves along the way because it happened too quickly and osmotic shock happened or anything like that. Take your time, make a correction. I think now for me personally, one reason testing has not been my favorite thing in the past to do it
Nobody's.
myself. Man, I just get anxious. And the reason being is because everybody has a range they're trying to hit. Like for the longest time, I wanted 450 calcium, I want 90 kH. On the button, they both got to be that 1400 magnesium. And if it's not, I'm going to panic because that's where it's got to be. But once you realize that those numbers will never stay pegged, never, because your corals are going to be uptaking and you're going to be replenishing. You just want to keep it in a zone. So now, like, I'm way more forgiving. If I'm between 390 and honestly, I've let it get as high as 500. But if I'm between 390 and 450 calcium, I'm cool. If my alkalinity is between 6 and 9.5, I'm okay. It's not going to happen quickly because nothing I'm doing in my tank is going to make it swing fast. Laziness is the only reason it gets that far. But as long as I'm in that bracket, I'm not going to panic. And I think that's what causes a lot of people to make these really quick changes to the tank is they panic. They're like, oh, my corals are going to die tomorrow. No, if you're at 6 and you want to be at 7.5, you're low.
Yeah.
Don't panic. Just start to make the correction to get it back up. And don't be afraid to test because you don't want to see the results. Or you're going to hyper focus on one number. Chill.
I'm going to make one little caveat to what you said, which is certain parameters are more important than others.
Absolutely.
And your animals, while they care about the calcium number, it's not an immediate concern of theirs.
Yes.
So if you got down to 390 and you slowly brought it back up to 400 or 420 or then 440, they're not going to react to that too much. If your alkalinity dropped to 6 and you immediately brought it back to 7, that they're going to react to, because that now so you need to get a sense of like, which parameters are these animals really sensitive to and which ones they're not.
That's what I'm saying. Like a week and a half has been my sweet spot. Like if in 10 days, basically, I can bring my alkalinity up 1 point, that I feel is a comfortable. I've done it faster than that and things do not like it.
Yeah.
If you do SPS and you jump alkalinity, I have seen many a tank crash from an alkalinity jump in either direction. If it drops suddenly, no good. If it comes up suddenly, no good. Soft corals, they're a different beast.
Okay, so this is coming across as like a little preachy. I want to end on a different note.
For sure.
Which I want people to understand that this is way easier today than it used to be.
So much.
Yes, you're looking for the testing and all of that, but look at back in the day when I had my first reef tank, I don't even want to talk about what age I was at that point and how many years ago that was, but back in those days, not only did half of the testing stuff not exist, and you had to just kind of figure out certain things, the testing that did exist, was so much harder than it is now. With all of the automated monitoring that we have now and the automated dosing and automatic water changes and everything else that you can do on an automated basis, and even not doing it on an automated basis, test kits are easier today than they used to be and more accurate. This is way easier. Keeping a reef tank today is way easier than it used to be.
Absolutely.
And in my opinion, getting set up to do it in the easiest way for you is the biggest factor when it comes to the long-term success of your system. Because
100%.
If you get set up in the way that makes it easy for you to do the things that you like, then you're going to maintain that system properly, and then that system's going to be a long-term system. We have some milestones in this industry. There's a 2-year milestone, there's a 1-year milestone, a 2-year milestone, a 5-year milestone, and a 10-year milestone. That's the way I look at it.
That's accurate.
Okay? So the 1-year milestone is you're going to fight with this thing tooth and nail for the first year. And you're going to do all kinds of crazy things to get through that first year. Once you hit that 1-year milestone, things start getting a little bit smoother and a little bit easier. And if you can stick with the program and get to the 2-year milestone, now you're a reef keeper. Now you went 2 years, you got a successful reef, things are growing, new stuff is coming out that you didn't expect. 2 years is a really healthy point to get to. Then we have the next milestone, which is 5 years. Now, the people that make it, a lot of people drop out at the 2-year point. They get frustrated, it was too much work. The tank did okay, but it wasn't worth it for them. When you go to that 5-year milestone, you're really into it. You are the reef keeper. You're the king. You knew what you had to do. You enjoy it. You revel in your system. You love sitting there with a cup of coffee or a cup of tea and looking at it. You marvel at the way it's grown. You love the things that you've added to it.
You don't make impulse purchases anymore.
You always make impulse purchases. That's the 5-year mark. And then there's the 10-year mark. The 10-year mark is a mark that most people don't get to. I've seen a number of people lecturing on reef keeping, you know, well, I don't want to mention the names, but you know, the old school group of people that do lectures. A lot of times they'll start a lecture by saying, how many people have had their tank for 10 years or more? And you see how many people in the audience raise their hand. It's very few. That 10-year mark is a really difficult mark to reach, not because it's hard to get there physically, but because people kind of lose interest. When you get to the 5-year mark, you did it, you got there, and you maintained it, and it all ran great. When you hit that 10-year mark, you're addicted. You are one of these people that is going to always have a reef tank, and you love it more than anything, and it's all about that. So think about those milestones, 1 year, 2 year, 5 years, and 10 years. Think about how much easier it is to hit those milestones now than it ever has been, and find out what you need to do in order to enjoy your tank and enjoy the hobby. And testing is part of that. So figure out what you need to do to enjoy testing once a month, and that'll help you reach those milestones.
And then you won't end up with the dreaded old tank syndrome, which is literally just complacency. Mm-hmm. That's all it is just complacency. Old tank syndrome for a long time, people used to think was all kinds of different things, like a deep sand bed going bad.
Well, it's true because you didn't maintain the deep sand bed. It doesn't go bad on its own. It goes bad because you don't do what you need to do to maintain
complacency.
it. Yeah.
So you can basically just avoid all of that, and you can make it to that 5-year mark or 10-year mark. If you made it to 2 years, you can make it to 5 years.
Yeah,
if you made it to 5, you can make it to 10.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of not letting the simple things that you have to continue to do fall by the wayside, and just understanding their importance, not letting those things stress you out in any way, shape, or form. I loved having a cup of coffee on a Sunday and just doing your tests. That is like, in my mind's eye, that is something I can sit down and do and enjoy.
Yeah.
You know, just pen it down and move on. Okay, this is where my tank's at. Oh, maybe I should up my doser by a notch.
Or that test didn't look right. Let me run that one again.
Yeah.
Oh, get more coffee.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And don't end up in that situation where all you do is water changes and your tank ever gets to a point where you're having to try to pick up the pieces because you just let things go. But we want to end on a happy note. And I think on the topic of finding out, you know, the maintenance that works for you, or the type of reef even that works for you, there is so many different ways to do the same thing and accomplish the same thing. And the most important thing, the thing you're going to be doing most often, which goes right along with this testing, is dosing alkalinity and calcium and magnesium. And there is a number of ways to accomplish that. There is no one right way that I can point you towards, but I can point you towards picking the right way for you. And more specifically, Lou can, because he's got a lot more experience with these things than I do. I know which one's right for me. It's my favorite one that's ever come out.
And we're going to talk about that.
We're going to talk about it. And you can check it out in this video right here. Knowing that I'm a lazy reefer, I bet half of you could probably guess which one it is. I'll give you a hint. It's Tropic Marin. Check it out.